All right. Well, I guess I'll get us started then. So, hi everyone. My name is Kendra Krueger. I am a engineer, scientist, and educator and artist too. I'll be presenting today with my partner Zahra Hassan, and we'll be talking about our Engaging STEM toolkit. And just a little bit of background, I've been working as a science educator for about 10 years. I started a platform called For Love and Science, which was all about teaching science from a heart-centered approach. And just last year, Zahra and I connected to teach a class for the Society of Poetic Computation called For Love and Science. It was a journey of reclaiming science through ancestral and intuitive practices. And through that, we really start to document some of these ideas and concepts of how to teach science from this kind of approach. And so when we saw the opportunity to work with the Processing Foundation, thought it was a great opportunity to dive deeper into that. So I'm going to pass it off to Zahra now to introduce themselves and also talk a little bit more about the vision for our project.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Kendra. Hi, my name is Zahra Hassan. I'm a writer, researcher, and educator from Vienna. I have roots in Iraq, and I come to this project with a background of an interdisciplinary master's at NYU, where I traced Iraqi orange trees around and really got into the history of colonial botany attached to that. And I just found it fascinating to get into different practices of knowledge, production, and transfer that are necessarily just working with analytical functions and the brain, but to figure out what it means to tap into your senses and see what sort of knowledge comes to the foreground if you do so. It becomes relatable to people, and where students, learners, practitioners can find their own approach to um, to science, to learning, and how to apply their own lessons from the classroom into the world. Yeah, so I think some of the most important streams of this toolkit is really like working with place-based knowledge lessons, giving teachers examples on how to get into a practice that really allows them to move closer to the world.
That we were playing around with, but we've decided to go with engaging STEM because we like the idea of engaging with the idea of what science is and also engaging students in science and STEM. So this is our little website that we've built from scratch. So the way that we sort of set up the toolkit is in 3 different sections. So I really thought about how are we connecting with teachers and like preparing teachers for this journey of teaching. What are you doing before you enter the classroom, kind of setting up your roadmap of curriculums and lesson plans, and then how do you show up in the classroom? How are you engaging students? How do you develop conversations and create open and brave spaces in this kind of way? And then a collection of different activities and exercises that kind of fit into this modality. Patterns and archetypes as learning technologies, looking at systems and these kind of like looking at behaviors and shapes, giving some examples from other lessons on here, talking about data and sensing with Arduino systems compared to our body systems again.
My name is Zainab Aliyu. I'm an artist and a cultural worker, and today I'm calling in from occupied Lenape territory, also known as Brooklyn, New York. And today I'll be sharing with you a talk called Echoes in the Archive, Decoding Colonial Legacies Through Sonic and Textual Interventions. And so to sort of unravel the layers of my fellowship project and to set the stage for the share, we have to rewind to 1977. And so in the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, a cacophony of voices of over 16,000 participants echoed through the air, heralding in this vibrant opening ceremony of Festac 77. And so Festac, or the Second World Black and African Festival for Arts and Culture, was a grand manifestation of Pan-Africanism that actually unfolded in my birthplace of Lagos, Nigeria in 1977. And it really celebrated the richness of around 56 different countries, like the African nations, both on the continent and, in its diasporic communities worldwide. And the festival was more than just a celebration. It really was also this convergence of voices, a proclamation of unity, and really this catalyst for the seeds of African liberation movements that had happened in decades prior. The legacy of Festac really reverberates through time, impacting like we the people of the African diaspora. And it's within this complex legacy that my project finds its roots, aiming to distort and reimagine the historical effigies that linger in our collective consciousness. And so with this historical backdrop, I want to, okay, I'm gonna pause because there's some audio, so I can't talk over the audio, but yeah. So with this historical and critical backdrop, I wanna introduce my project, which is called Freedom is a Durational Practice. And it's an experimental durational moving image meditation on that's really seeking to foreground anthems of celebration across diaspora and transversing borders to fabricate this infinite Pan-African chorus of shared somatic vibrations. And so the work is actually a computationally generated ensemble that's composed of almost 100 at this time anthems, protests, freedom songs from the diaspora, and the anthem songs that have historically accompanied African liberation movements really carry the weight of both triumph and tribulation. So while they really encapsulate the spirit of resistance and the yearning for freedom, many of them are still really imbued with these patriarchal constructs. So really like vestiges of a past that intertwine with the complexities of decolonization. And so the promise of liberation, while deeply ingrained in the songs, still often carry undertones of like chauvinism and patriarchal norms, which is like really speaking to like the colonial legacy that I was talking about, specifically with the Festac event. And colonizers often imposed their languages in legal, educational, administrative contexts, really creating a linguistic framework and a lexicon that reinforce their version of history, as well as the implicit biases within them. And so really examining language allows us to deconstruct these narratives and recover suppressed and marginalized perspectives, and really allows us to challenge systems that perpetuate inequity. And so built with, okay, I'm gonna lower sound. Okay, so yeah, so built with P5JS within this project, this is like a close-up of it. I'm using different computational methods to really defamiliarize and decontextualize the patriarchal constructs of the language. And so really altering them enough to make them visible again and exposing the different social norms and values that they expose. And so in this project, I'm thinking about when the lyrics are decontextualized and resurface in a different order, like what do we learn, what social values and norms do they expose? And also working with P5 was also a deliberate decision for me, just based on its versatility and accessibility, P5's user-friendly nature, and really its commitment to extensive documentation made it an ideal platform for me to work with for realizing the vision of this project, and also thinking about the just sort of ethic of sharing, and it really speaks to things that I find important in cultural work. And so with this work, I'm also drawing upon Saidiya Hartman's notion of the chorus in her book, Wayward Lives, Beautiful Experiments. And as you kind of saw from those visual renderings I brought about here, I'm sort of surfacing like quote unquote wayward compositions that is seeking to distort the colonial residue and remnants of empire in our ongoing struggle for liberation. And so the project as a whole is a browser-based, like non-linear film is sort of what I'm calling it, an experimental film that is infinitely playing, and it resets at the beginning of every hour. And like I mentioned, in terms of the sound is actually composed of that living ethnomusicological archive that was started by my dad, continued by me, and just within the family, really. in this archive. I've been collaborating with my father to continue to assemble this, make sure it's archived and documented, and it's composed of different instruments across Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas. And so within the piece, anytime a country is referenced in the text, a sound from an instrument of that country plays. And really through this assembly of the ethnomusicological archive of sounds and lyrical texts, my project is also seeking to serve as a cultural repository that, and really kind of thinking about how we preserve Afro-diasporic cultural heritage to make sure that these histories are documented, celebrated, and accessible to future generations. And so, yeah, I really hope for this work to also inspire ongoing critical discourse around power dynamics, societal structures, and the ways in which language really shapes our perceptions. No, for sure. I think like these tools are inherently limiting because they are, even though they are working really hard to present like more ways for us to like interact in a more liberatory way, they are still built in the world that we live in, which is a world that's dominated by like these different value systems that we are sort of like working against, right? And so like they are limiting because they're built still like in this world. And I think with our work, we're trying to think outside of that. And I think, yeah, for my project in particular, I think one of the things that came up is wanting to build this in a way that it's a living archive, not just working and saying like, okay, this is like a complete archive of like text and sounds like, and it's done. I'm just presenting this. Like I wanted to sort of think about like, yeah, both speaking to like the non-linearity of it, but also the sort of like living archiveness of it. I'm sure also to your work, like you're thinking of like continue to build out this curriculum for time to come. And so I think, yeah, for me, that was something that I was wanting to prioritize in this work is sort of thinking about how can I build it in a way where it's okay that it's an incomplete archive right now, and knowing that I will continue collecting text, I will continue collecting sounds, and I want to continue to like imbue those new discoveries into this work.
In this way of creating kind of curriculum and starting to push the boundaries of what is traditional curriculum and bring in like these other ways of knowledge building and these other ways of teaching that are even, there's still like this huge divide between, I think, more progressive, just like regular educational models and like STEM education models that are still like very rooted in, analytical and these sort of more emotionally removed ways of doing learning. And we're learning so much now, like it's like so important as for the student to be engaged in that emotional and have all these other aspects of like the full child that's going to be activated in all these ways. So yeah, how do we like also like still put something out there to be that can be used and that can be to know that like these resources are out there and this information and this past is out there and these records are out there and these this music is out there and that it can still have that lineage of connection to us today. And it's always that dance of figuring out how to do it but not replicate it in the way where it then becomes just the same as like another dusty archive or dusty toolkit that no one's gonna engage with. And some kind of playful, I think it's cool that we've all kind of figured out a way to be like a little bit playful with it. On our website, most of the content that we put on there is all like in blog format, so people can comment and add and share. So we definitely hope that it remains interactive in that kind of format and that it's open source and is used and, shared, cited, and evolves and continues to evolve. And I think, in the same way that we hope that it like infinitely can repeat and create new combinations and modifications in that kind of way in all of the work that we could do or to share with others.